So today I want to talk about my talk is on COINTELPRO. And COINTELPRO, this is a very important subject. COINTELPRO stands for the Counterintelligence Program. And COINTELPRO became known, in the movement during the 1960s when it was discovered that the FBI began to infiltrate groups and began to, employ tactics in order to neutralize different groups and organizations. So, the COINTELPRO, there's, people say COINTELPRO, but actually there's many different programs that, the U.S. Has in the works at all times. And so there's various programs, but people kind of lump them all up together and, just call it COINTELPRO. And in reality, it is various programs, various things going on with the U.S. government. So with that being said, I want to just describe that the COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program of the U.S., refers to actions taken against resistance groups, organizations. Most of these actions are illegal. They're illegal under the colonizers' own laws. So, they're employing tactics like breaking into people's homes. They're getting people fired from jobs. They do a lot of different things in order, to target individuals or organizations. The main purpose and goal of targeting is for neutralizing these individuals or organizations. And when I say neutralize, the term neutralize, I'm talking about either disabling, murdering, or disrupting, disallowing the individual or group to continue to function and fulfill their goals and objectives. So this is the goal of COINTELPRO, to neutralize individuals or groups in various ways. And again, we could go back to the 1950s, McCarthyism, when they had these big, the colonizers, in their political world, they had these big hearings, and politician McCarthy was at the head of spearheading this stuff, and they were basically on the hunt for revolutionaries, and in general, and communists in particular. And they seen them everywhere. They thought that they were in the movie industry, they were in the teachers in the school systems, and so they were super paranoid on revolutionaries, being within the society of this colonizer, country. So this is some of the stuff that they've done. And during the 1950s, what the people like to call the Red Scare, because they were constantly on the hunt for revolutionaries, communists, socialists, what have you. Anybody left of the center was targeted and accused of being, anti-government or what have you. So this is during the Red Scare. A lot of, we can see a lot of the activities at that time as COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, and a lot of things that they did during that time. If you study history, you see that, they did things like would show up at people's jobs and tell the employer, hey, do you know that your employee is a communist? And then the employer at the time, to be considered a communist, is like somebody being accused of being a Al Qaeda today. It's like, oh my God, like, he's a communist. Oh, he's a communist. And so it was seen as it had a lot of stigma to the word. Even today, some people are very, ignorant to what that really means. But my point is that they would go to people's jobs, they would go to people's landlords and tell them, do you know you're renting to a communist, to a revolutionary? And so these are some of the tactics that they employed during that time of the Red Scare. And then going forward into the 1960s, they began to employ this, counterintelligence program on a lot of the resistance groups at the time. And specifically, they targeted very heavily is the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was targeted by COINTELPRO by, they would not only do all of the above that what I said, but they would outright murder people. They would send infiltrators into agents into the party and get information on specific individuals, and then they would outright murder them. So, the counterintelligence program is, it's more, it has been operating for a very long time. And I recently received some documents, and these are, through Freedom of Information Act. And, and so some of the things on these documents are that, they're talking about the Chicano moratorium of 1970. And, one of the things that I found interesting, and we can see this as part of their surveillance program. Counterintelligence program is just part of their overall surveillance program that they have in these false U.S. borders, and this is meant to keep an eye and watch closely revolutionaries and resistance groups within these false U.S. borders. So I thought it was very interesting, and I wanted to share that. On this particular document, it is filed August 11th, 1970 by the FBI office in San Francisco. And it says here that, it gives a brief description of the activity or material, because when they fill out these fill papers, they have to describe what it is that they're documenting here. And in this case, it says a flyer advertising the Chicano moratorium. And so this flyer has a list of organizations, and these organizations have their own number, the field number next to it. So, it's the number to their specific file. But these organizations are listed in the remarks. But what's very interesting is it says, in small letters, it says individuals designated by an asterisk only attended a meeting and did not actively participate. Then it goes on to say violence or revolutionary activities were not discussed. So that's very eye-opening that this is something that they want to know. They want to know not only who was there, but they want to know who was actively participating, because there's a difference. There's difference of attending a protest, and there's a difference of actually being a part of the speakers or being a part of, the front line, being a part of, the bullhorn, or, doing whatever activity you're doing. So the fact that they want to know who's exactly doing what, and this is what they do. So we have to keep in mind that every single action, whether that is, Save the Whales March or, Kids in Cages action, it doesn't matter what it is, but the state is always going to fill these papers out and keep note of organizations that are participating. So we have to understand that, like, that's a given. It happens everywhere. And also, you know we can't call ourselves a revolutionary if, I don't want to get a fill card on me. I don't want, to be like, a revolutionary means, do away with the entire system. And so it doesn't mean just like, well, I'm a revolutionary on my couch, and I don't want to. So you have to understand that there's going to be repression everywhere, and we just have to find ways to move forward. We have to move forward, and that's all we can do, because we have to be amongst the masses. We have to be amongst the masses. We have to, somebody has to speak. So if everybody with any kind of knowledge says, well, I want to go to an action, but I don't want to speak because I don't want to be labeled as a speaker at these things by the state, by the agents, by the oppressor, the agencies involved. Well, if everybody with knowledge and understanding took that approach, there would be no speakers, and everybody with knowledge stood back and said, "Well, I don't want. Let somebody else." And then somebody with no kind of idea or understanding of the social reality of this specific event or action speaks, and they could be speaking, wrong, and identifying the wrong contradictions in a situation. So we do need people to speak up, regardless. That's the thing. It's either that or there's nobody in the streets, and there's nobody mobilizing the communities because nobody wants to. So we have to be realistic about this. That it comes with the territory. There is going to be, it is putting yourself out there a little bit on the line, but when you're a revolutionary, that's what you do. You practice security culture as much as you could, but at the end of the day, we do need people leading the masses in the streets, and we do need educated, politically educated speakers at these events, and we can't allow the state to, to intimidate us, not to participate like that. So it's very important that we do that. But the state repression is very real. We have to understand that it's going to continue to happen. It has been happening, and stuff like that. But they do pay attention to everything, absolutely everything. Here's another document. This is stamped with the Department of Justice information on there. You could see that a little bit. FBI document, and it's dated August 19th, 1970. And it says Crusade for Justice, Internal Security. And it talks about what the Crusade for Justice was, and who it was headed up by. It has Corky Gonzalez's name. It also says that it notes that they had a newspaper dated January 1970, and their newspaper was called El Gallo. And it says here that the newspaper carried a, quote, Pig of the Month award, end quote, for Denver police. And they gave they gave the Denver police the Pig of the Month award for being the biggest pigs. And that's funny. It's funny. And I love that idea of how Crusade for Justice had the Pig of the Month award. Somebody needs to bring that back. So we need to get that back in publications, Pig of the Month award. But my point is that even something like that gets thrown in this report. And then after that, they go on and talk about the Crusade for Justice held a second annual Chicano Youth Conference in Denver. And so, this is, it says that, there's people trying to overtake Aslan and gain political power, etc. And later it talks about the anti-draft conference in Denver, where Crusade for Justice instructs members of avoiding military induction and not to go into the military. And so it's just, it's interesting how it's good to see how the oppressor, how they surveil us, what's important to them, what they focus on, what the things that they want to know. It's very interesting, and useful for our work and to understand what we're up against, what we're dealing with. And so there's just, a whole lot of information here that, um, that I was luckily to get my hands on. And, a comrade had passed on to me these documents. And it's very interesting, a lot of it is about the Chicano moratorium and, how they heavily surveil these demonstrations by the Chicano nation. And for them to do that, it tells you that they are very threatened by the Chicano moratorium. They are very threatened. And so that's, it's good to know. But, so yeah, they just have, and so COINTELPRO, it is real, it is a real thing, counterintelligence program, and they do many illegal things, as I said, all the way up to murder. They've done it plenty of times. So, it's something that we have to understand that, we have to be cautious, we have to be careful, but we still have to do our work. And if nobody wants to do the work, then we go on being oppressed for another 500 years because nobody wants to get targeted by COINTELPRO. So we got to be careful, but the struggle don't stop, and we got to continue to do this. And this is interesting. This is a very interesting docket in this packet, and this one says treat as yellow, and that's a security code for the U.S. government. And if you look here on this document, it says transmit the messages followed by coded teletype, and it says urgent priority, and it says it's a field dissemination. And if you look on these boxes, there's various people that are checked off, and you can see that, one is the president. Under that, it's checked off, send it also to the vice president. It says send it to the Secretary of State, send it to the director of CIA, send it to the director of Defense Intelligence Agency, send it to Department of the Army, send it to Department of the Air Force, send it to the Naval Investigative Service, send it to the Secret Service, send it to the Attorney General, and send it to the National Security Agency. And having it sent to the National Security Agency in 1970, when nobody even knew the National Security Agency existed in 1970. That's interesting. But my point is that at the end of this, the subject, all it says is National Chicano Moratorium, August 29th, 1970. So they did all this just to send, this message, and there's a report about the Chicano Moratorium. And it went from the president all the way down, all of these directors of agencies, etc. This is just a report on the Chicano moratorium. And you got to remember the people organizing the Chicano moratorium, they're not from other countries, or they were from the, from just from the regular neighborhood. These are people from the Chicano community who organized this action. And look at, it went all the way to the president. You have the president talking about, knowing about the Chicano moratorium. So, this should let you all know that the Chicano moratorium is more threatening to the state apparatus than we think. People think, wow, just a moratorium, whatever. We're gonna march and walk around, but it's actually, it's drawing a line in the sand, um, and identifying as the Chicano nation, separate from the U.S., and calling them out that their military actions are wrong, that it's wrong to join the U.S. military, and this is what is going on. So, as I said, to see that their concern for a Chicano moratorium went all the way to the president, and that's very interesting. But we have to continue to organize the Chicano moratoriums. We know that they're going to be on it. Every moratorium, saturated with COINTELPRO, but it doesn't stop the people. We have to continue forward. This is how, we have to do it. If we don't do it, who will? Nobody. So, it's good to be aware of this stuff. COINTELPRO, we know, look at Fred Hampton was actually murdered through a COINTELPRO program where they planted an agent, an informant in the organization, who was supposed to be head of his security. And this person let the police know where he was sleeping, what the layout was to where he was at, and they went in and they murdered him. So, COINTELPRO is very real and deadly. We have to certainly be careful, and we know that they have targeted organizations and individuals in the past. They have done many things. They have planted stuff on people. They have murdered people. They have injured many people, destroyed property. They've done so many things in their counterintelligence, and the whole goal is to stop, neutralize certain individuals or organizations. So, this is why we got to be on our toes at all times. We got to be, 100%, vigilant. We have to remain vigilant in everything we do, because we know that they are actively hunting for information and intel on certain individuals, certain organizations, and certain activities, especially anything revolutionary. It definitely it gets on the radar. But again, we be careful, but we have to continue forward. If we don't, no one else will. And so COINTELPRO, America's counterintelligence program, aimed and targeting mostly oppressed nations people. In the 1950s, they called it the Red Scare. They employed much of the same tactics. In the 1960s and 70s, they began, targeting, the brown and black resistance groups and movements. And today they continue to operate. When we hear things that are leaked out, whether this is, from Julian Assange or whether it's from Edward Snowden, what have you, there's a lot of people who worked, either had access to information or actually worked in the U.S. government and leaked information. And so we get to see that they're continuing with this program of repression. And they do it in many different ways. In prison, there's COINTELPRO as well. They got COINTELPRO, they got counterintelligence in there. They actually assassinate people. They will open your door, open another person's door, and somebody will get killed. And they do that purposely. Or they'll let people out in these gladiator fights with the intent of actually assassinating somebody. And when people come out, then the gun tower shoots the individual. So, we've been seeing it. We've seen it with Hugo Pinal, many different people in U.S. prisons going back, over 100 years. We could go back to, Magon being assassinated in Fort Leavenworth. Ricardo Magon. So, they've been doing this forever, ever since there was prisons. They've been, just, inflicting their terror on the people, pig terror. So there's certainly COINTELPRO in prisons as well. They have agents, they do assassinations on prisoners that, the state doesn't like. They do a lot of different things as well in prison, the same things on a different scale. So COINTELPRO definitely is alive. They are definitely employing many different tactics. And they are certainly targeting certain individuals. They are certainly targeting certain organizations. But la lucha sigue, and we will continue, and we're not going to allow state repression to, make us not want to, we have to have a voice. We have to continue forward, and that's what we will do. And so, you all that want to, read further, COINTELPRO, there's a pretty good book, Agents of Repression, that focuses on COINTELPRO, counterintelligence programs, and and it's very interesting to, or you come across some of these, Freedom of Information Act documents, very, very important as well, because we learn from history in order to change history, and it's just to see what our people, the type of repression that our people have been undergoing for 50 years is incredible, because we're still here, we're still struggling forward, and we're still suffering lots of repression. Recently, for those of you who have followed some of the things that I've been going through, I was recently captured as well. So it is real. It is real. Is it going to stop? This movement? Is it going to stop? Speaking out? Absolutely not. And the Free Aslan YouTube channel is proof of that. Like, the struggle continues. We're going to continue to do our thing, and to continue to mobilize the Chicano masses, and prepare the ground in order to seize power. And that's what we're about at Free Aslan. So continue forward, my beautiful Raza, and continue to learn about COINTELPRO, understand, the tactics they've used, that they continue to use, and continue to be safe. And with that being said, Free Aslan.